my name is Zeynab, Caba. So I'm from Ivory Coast, but I now live in London. I was born in Ivory Coast in the region of Kumasi. I was living there until about 8 years old. And then I moved to London, to the UK, to live with my parents. My dad had previously moved here to study, and my mum joined him shortly after. And I stayed with my grandparents back home until about 8, 9 years old. Then I joined my parents here in London. When I came here, we were living in North London. So I went to primary school in Bruce Grove. And then I went to secondary school around that same area as well, in a secondary school called Northumberland Park. I think they've changed the name now to Duke Aldrich Academy. So I went there for from year 7 till year 11. And then I was fortunate enough to get a bursary, like a scholarship to go to boarding school for sixth form. So I went to boarding school for 2 years where I did my IB, which is my International Baccalaureate, with like a science focus because I was really interested in science. Following that, I went to Swansea University to do a medical science degree. Came back to London to complete a master's in health policy, and that's where I am today. There's no one specific incident that I can sort of point to say this is where my interest in science developed from. But there are sort of like little memories that I have that I think definitely pushed me towards science. The first is that I remember from a very young age, my dad used to to help give out vaccination programs in Ivory Coast. So I sort of have this memory of him and a little briefcase vaccinating children. And I thought that was like a really good thing to do. That sort of inspired my interest in science. But also, one of my mom's sisters was very sick when I was younger as well. And I most of the time I felt like I avoided visiting her, not because I didn't want to go to see my auntie, but because I felt sort of helpless. I didn't know how to help her. I didn't know how to make her feel better. And I especially remember one time I went to visit her and she was really sick. She was vomiting. And I just sat there and I had to let her do what she was doing. There was no way I could help her. I didn't like that helpless feeling that I had. So I think from that point on, I took an interest in the human body and how like our human body behaves in those scenarios. And that's definitely edged me towards science to sort of find answers so that I don't have to feel helpless next time someone is sick next to me. I can offer them some sort of help. And I think that was one of like the major reasons why I went into science. From my experience, like I've had to do a lot of research to sort of find opportunities that are sort of valuable, not valuable to me, but maybe that I want to participate in. There's a lot of opportunities available for sort of scientists in the UK to work with universities to take part in research projects, etc. And I think most of the time I had to sort of ask those questions to my lecturers, ask those questions at university, at academic centers to sort of find my way through those. They're not opportunities that are readily available. They don't come to you. So there are sort of internship programs. There are studies into like social sciences and medicine. But those kind of things, you have to go looking for them. You have to ask the questions. You have to ask your lecturers, your academic cohorts and stuff to find them. I think one of the good places as well that I have found is Twitter. So I've been on Twitter not for very long, but through Twitter, I was able to find loads of people that are interested in science or in the same field that I am and liaise with them. And through that sort of process, I've been able to find loads of good opportunities. I think I found this opportunity to be here today through Twitter as well. So yeah, I would definitely recommend scientists to have like a Twitter profile at least. Yeah. I think personally, most of the time, I haven't felt like there was an advantage because of my gender most of the time. I think that's probably because of the fact that I've sort of followed this line of going to school and then from school going to college and then from college going to university. But I definitely think that science being a heavily male-dominated field, it can be a little harder for women to penetrate through. I think that sometimes as women, we kind of take a back seat because it's sort of like what is expected, because the male voice dominates over. So there's a lot of times where you have to push through and sort of leave the imposter syndrome behind you and just know that because you have the skills, you have the knowledge, you are as entitled to be there as a woman as anyone else. Um, yeah, so I think definitely because is a male dominated field, women can sort of kind of feel intimidated at times. I do have a mentor. I'm currently on a 6 month mentoring program because of the fact that I have a degree in medical sciences and now I have a master's in health policy, and they are quite different in terms of the field that they're in. So I do have a mentor that's sort of helping me navigate that change. I think mentorship is really important, especially for someone like me, who's essentially first generation. My parents are not scientists. I don't have a lot of scientists people in my family or in my community that I can turn to. So having someone who can help answer questions when you have questions, help guide you, is really, really crucial. And it kind of helps lower like the stress. It helps for you to sort of find your way through at times, because you can get very stuck and sometimes it can be quite lonely. So if you have someone that you can talk to, is really, really important. Yeah, I think mental health at this particular moment is really big. Like it's always been something that has been sort of prominent, especially in science where you are expected to do a lot. Like there is a lot of things to do in your professional life, and also you have a personal life to maintain as well. So it can sort of have a strain on your mental health. I think that because of the whole pandemic situation now, there's been a lot of push towards taking care of our mental health, having like services available. And I think that's really important, but sort of pushing people to go for help when they need to, and destigmatizing mental health and allowing people to be like, you know what, I've got a limit and reaching that limit is not good for me. I need to take a step back. Personally, I did have some problems with anxiety and burnout as well, because most of the time through my studies, I've had to keep a job whilst going to school, which sometimes can be very taxing on a person, just physically, but also mentally as well. So I've had to have times where I've had to take time off for both just to look after my mental health. And I think during that process, one of the things that really helped me was journaling. So keeping a journal of my mental thoughts, my mental space, has been very, very helpful to sort of help me keep things into perspective and not to overdo things. When things feel a bit overwhelming, to take a step back and slow down, which is really important because a lot of the times we forget to slow down. But that's sort of, yeah, my advice for mental health. I think as a public health issue, it's pretty much quite a concerning one, because antimicrobial resistance, for example, is quite a leading public health concern for us here in the UK because of the amount of antibiotics that are being prescribed. But the sort of overarching theme of it is that when people are given the information and they're given the knowledge as to why certain things happen, it can help their like personal attitudes, their personal behaviors to help curb that. I think in the COVID pandemic, it sort of brought back some feelings that I mentioned before at the start of the interview, this feeling of like helplessness that I didn't particularly like. So COVID came and there was a lot to do. And as a student, there wasn't really a place for me to be um, helping people directly. So in the beginning, I started volunteering at local health centers and hospitals to see what I can do, because all of a sudden there's no school, I've got a lot of free time. And I wanted to use that free time productively. And in that process, I was able to get a part-time job working with the London Ambulance Service in the dispatch. So in the control rooms, answering 999 calls, helping the ambulance crews, etc. And I think through that process, I grew a lot of compassion and empathy. And I think it really like broadened my perspective of like society as a whole. It helped me establish like sort of the link between the work that I'm learning at school in terms of the health policy and its direct impact in real life. Because every day when I went into work, there was new policy, there was changes being made to accommodate the climate that we were in, so to like make sure that we prepared for the pandemic. And then I would go back to school and I would learn about how policies come into place. So it was a really crucial point for me to grow perspective and to sort of see myself um, in like grow into the person that I want to become essentially. And I think that's the biggest takeaway that I've had from this pandemic is definitely been my growth in compassion, and also my perspective has changed massively. Yeah, so I think for me is it was finding a group of people that are very similar to me as well. I think growing up in North London, there's a lot of us that are first generation trying to do this, and it was about building that community, and having people that you can have those conversations with. So there's an organization like Homegirls UK that are for elder. I'm also the first child of my family, so I'm the eldest daughter. So that also comes with its challenges. Um, so I found Homegirls UK, which was an organization that is created to sort of be like a safe space for first generation elder daughters to vent and just be amongst people that are quite similar. And also mentorship. Like I had people who are in the field that could guide me in times when I was lost. Between my third year at university and my master's, I was completely lost. I didn't know what to do. There was sort of like family expectations, social expectations that were not compatible with the career that I was choosing. And I had to I had to speak to my mentors and say, like, this is where I am right now. I'm not sure about the next steps to take. And they were able to sort of help me and guide me by just giving me information that I can like talk through and walk through myself. So I would think it's definitely guidance and support of communities of similar women or similar people like yourself. Um, and also honesty, like just being honest that, this can be a bit difficult, it can be hard, it can be lonely. And if you're honest in that with yourself and also with the people that are trying to help you, I think it can really help take you far.
Sometimes you actually feel like you don't have a choice because you look around and you say, um, essentially, if I don't do this, like, what else am I going to do? Like, it's something that you're really passionate about. You want to help people. Um, and that's what kept me going personally, is about realizing that this is something I really, really want to do. Um, and the more I learned, the more I studied, the more I met people, I discussed with them, the more I was like comfortable in my field, even though most of the time I felt like I didn't know as much as my peers or as much as the people that were in the field. Um, I always believed that I can also get to where they got before. I realized that they had to start from somewhere. So that's what I'm doing as well. I'm starting from somewhere. Yeah. With the discipline, I think it all comes down to your reason why you're in the science field. Like for me, like I said, I have a specific reason that I want to be able to help people. I want to be able to contribute positively to society. I want to be able to take the knowledge that I have, that I learned, to go back home to Ivory Coast and help my community, help my family. Um, so with that kind of like sort of reasoning behind my one of the reasons why I'm in science, that and plus the fact that I really do enjoy um, science, it kind of that keeps me disciplined in the field. Um, and I think it all also comes down to the people surrounding you as well. So it doesn't like harm to be involved in the social sides of things, because it's normal to have a social life, which sometimes gets lost in science. Like, you're expected to be on your best behavior all the time. You're expected to be professional at all times. But like, if you have a life, if you have a social life, if you're able to go out with your friends to enjoy life as it comes to you. Um, it kind of helps as well with your studies. It helps keep you focused. It helps with your mental health. So that's one thing I could say. Secondly, as well, is about knowing your own boundaries, knowing where you can stop and say like, okay, this is where I finish. And that also comes with self-awareness, that comes with having people around you that are similar. I think that's really important, having people around you that are relatable to you. I think then they can guide you, you can guide them. Yeah. I think volunteering is really, really valuable. It's a way for you to gain skills. It's a way for you to discover what you're good at and what you actually really like. For example, before I decided to do my master's, I volunteered in a hospital, just to be on ward for a bit and like know, like, okay, this is medicine. This is what it looks like on a day-to-day basis. It's not the Grey's Anatomy things that you see on TV. Also, like, it keeps you in touch with your local community. It keeps you in touch with people, because sometimes like studying can kind of feel just between you and you, but if you volunteer, you get to interact with different people, and you also see like the intersectionality between different fields. You can be volunteering in like a medical organization or something, and then the people that you're volunteering with would be like have backgrounds in like marketing or business or logistics, and you get to learn so much just by being involved. And I think one of the best things about volunteering as well, the responsibilities of it is not so rigid. So you do it based on what you can give and not what you're requested to give as well. A lot of healthcare problems comes down to funding, essentially, because especially in responsiveness to the pandemic, a lot of the issues that many people face was like staff shortages. There's like so many patients and so much things to do and not many professionals. And that problem trickles down from so many different fields and so many different like walks of life. But I think one of the main issues with that is funding as well. So I think funding solves a lot of problems. Like right now with the vaccines and vaccine distribution, that's funding is one of the main issues where some people can have more than others, and some people can have more than they need, like more than enough, and others have to sort of like ration. So yeah, I think I would definitely highlight funding as the main sort of problem with health policy, policy making, policy adherence. Yeah.
My future prospect at the moment, I'm finishing my master's, which I think is a really big achievement for me. And then following on that, I would like to do some more postgraduate studies in science, in the field of social science and medicine. So that's where I'm looking towards, maybe in the next few years, either a PhD program or just more knowledge in health policy and health policy making. And yeah, so that's basically where I see myself going. It's very different from the path that I started on, because initially I started in medical sciences, hoping to become a physician at the end of it. But I find myself now at a new crossroad, which is really exciting. And the advice I would give to young scientists is just to go for it. Is a really fulfilling field to be in. Is really rewarding. There's so much to learn. There's always more to learn. There's always more questions to ask. If you're curious, you're in the right place, because the work that we do directly impacts society at every single level. Yeah, so I would say like go for it. Yeah.
The one thing I really want people to sort of understand is that curiosity, like having questions and knowing where, like, how to get the answers to those questions. So just being curious generally in life is really important. It can be very fulfilling. It can be a bit of a challenge sometimes, but I think in the end, you do like benefit from a lot of its fruits. So that's one thing. And another thing is just don't be afraid to ask. Always ask questions, whether that will be like asking for help or asking people to asking to be of service to others and asking people to be of service to you. So yeah, so just generally be curious and also ask questions, or which is pretty much the same thing, but be curious about life and also ask for help.